Alright guys, I'm just making this to show you a little way of how you can keep your rotation up at full 100% of the time without getting any loss in between and without wasting any resources. So this is kind of how to keep your buffs active and not lose any resources. So base game, let's say if I activate that, it'll last for, let's see, 20 seconds, and so it'll end, and when it ends there's a little visual to kind of notify that, so that's kind of easy to keep track of, but some other skills won't be as easy. So right here it'll proc the animation, so I know it just ended, so then it's time for me to reactivate it, and that's 20 seconds. And then there's some other skills that are not as easy to tell when the animation is done. For example, this one, when it ends, it's kind of hard to tell when it's done. It'll last for a whole minute. So if you're in combat and you put your AoE, your dot, and other skills, maybe a buff, and then you start doing damage, you'll have to keep track of that time. Switch back to the back bar, put your dot, AoE, and reapply them in order to keep that damage up. Now that's kind of hard to keep track of. The timings, especially in an actual fight, this is just a dummy, so it's easy to keep track of the timer and the visual of when the effect ends. When you're in actual combat, it's very impossible, especially when, like, let's say if I put Soul Gem, it's very easy to see that visual on him, but when you have your other party putting their own skills on, it's very hard to see your skill and when it'll end. See, it just ended. So an easy way to do that is get a buff tracker or some type of UI changer. I personally use Bandit UI and sometimes AUI. So I'm just going to turn on my buff tracker, and I will now be able to see the timer of how long it'll end. It's down at the bottom, but sometimes that's hard to keep track of. So I put it right here next to my chat. It's easier to see sometimes. Sometimes I do actually move it. I put them next to me. They're more easier to see like that. Sometimes I might make important ones bigger, so they're easier to keep track of. But right now I've kind of been testing it out over where I just had it. Kind of like it over there, right next to the chat log. Kind of works. Now let's kind of look at the Sorc a bit. The buffs for this class are also very important to keep up. They're important for every class, but Boundless or Hurricane, you want this up 100% of the time. It's a huge damage mitigation, AoE, and speed buff. Unlike Leeching Strikes for the Nightblade, it's okay to let this one hit 1 second and then reactivate. It does not need to end. There's no additional buff, but you would get like minuscule seconds of loss. It's not too big of a deal. So yeah, you really want to keep this up at all times because it'll lower your damage taken by about 30%. Yeah. Yeah, less damage taken. Oh, and a speed increase of 30%. Yeah, that's what it is. So yeah, you want to keep this up at all times. You get 30% speed increase and about 20% damage mitigation, I believe, when you have this up. And the speed buff is really nice because if you need to escape combat, it's a lot easier. And it's just good to have less damage taken in, so it's very good to have. It also kind of complements Bolt Escape really well. It allows you to escape kind of tough situations really fast. It's one of the most mobile classes because of that. But keep in mind that if you use Bolt Escape too often, if cast again within 4 seconds, it'll cost 33% more magicka. So that is not tracked by the base game. Normally, you would need a tracker. So if I use Bolt Escape, you'll see it'll say I have a timer, and then it runs out, and then I can cast it again and it's fine. Now in the top right corner it'll have a 1. That'll mean its first cast was normal cost, second cast will be 33%, next will be 66, and so on and so forth. So this costs a lot of magicka. If you look at my magicka, it's pretty low, so you want to keep track of that. And you can see I also have a widget for when my potion is ready. Now, some people would like to use, where is this, Critical Surge. Now Critical Surge gives you Major Prophecy and Major Sorcery. So what that is, or Major Brutality and Major Sorcery. Major Brutality you won't really need as a sorcerer, but it does give you Major Sorcery. Major Brutality is for weapons, and Major Sorcery is for stabs. So Major Sorcery increases your spell damage, so that's very good to have. But I personally like to switch Critical Surge out and put Bolt Escape in, just so I have a good way of escaping combat, because I can just use a potion that gives me the same buff. For example, Essence of Spell Power gives me Major Sorcery, which is that 20% damage buff for 30 seconds. But this potion will also give me Major Prophecy, which will allow me to hit more spell crit, and it also regens stamina, and it changes, it puts my recovery up too, so that's very good. I like it more so than Critical Surge. The one thing Critical Surge has that the potion doesn't is that every time you deal critical damage, it heals you. But again, I don't really like that. I don't know. I like the potion more. So it's easier to keep track. Timers like this. And then when your potion is ready, you can proc that. And it keeps track of the timer down below, so I know when it's ready. Anyway, thank you for listening to my TED Talk.